Libra, August will be one of the best months of 2026 ever. Wait a second before you keep scrolling, because there's something nobody told you about what August 2026 is really going to do to Libra, and it's not what the headlines are promising. You've probably heard it's going to be an amazing month. Maybe you've even heard it too often, in a way that sounds nice but empty, like those generic predictions that work for any sign, in any year. But what if I told you that amazing, in this case, doesn't mean gifts arriving from abroad? It means something you've been avoiding facing for years, finally coming to the surface, uninvited. Libra has a quiet talent, making others feel at peace, even when nothing is truly at peace inside. And August will put exactly that talent to the test, not as punishment, as an invitation. By the end of this video, you'll understand why your indecision was never about not knowing what you want, and what changes when you stop pretending you don't know. Something inside you will make sense in a way it never has before, and it might be uncomfortable to realize that, but it's precisely that discomfort that August came to unlock. You've heard it before. August is going to be amazing for Libra, and the first thing that comes to mind is a list of good things falling from the sky, an invitation, some news, a date. But nobody ever told you what really happens when a month is truly good for you. Because for Libra, luck has never been about what comes from the outside. It's always been about what finally stops hurting inside. Imagine a shop window. Well-arranged, illuminated, each item in its right place, designed to make passers-by want to come in. But the window isn't the shop. Behind it is a stockroom, a controlled mess, boxes no one sees, products waiting their turn to appear. You are that window. You've spent your whole life organizing the part that others see, the smile at the right moment, the opinion tailored so as not to offend, the polite silence when you disagreed with someone you loved. And it worked. People like you, they feel safe around you. Some people spend their lives trying to learn this kind of care for the environment around them, and you were born knowing how to do it almost effortlessly. That's no small thing. It's a real refined talent that opens doors, builds bridges, and makes entire spaces feel lighter just because you're in them. But every talent has a hidden cost when used without stopping to rest. And the cost of this one, specifically, lies exactly behind the window. But nobody ever asked what's stored back there, in the stockroom you never let anyone see. Here's the first uncomfortable thing. This backlog has a name. It's called an unpaid bill. Every time you chose to keep the peace instead of saying what you really felt, a small portion was added to a bill that never arrives in the mail. There's no visible due date, there's no billing notice. But the bill exists, and it grows silently along with every "it's okay, don't worry" you said without truly feeling it. And perhaps you've already noticed this in small moments. That tiredness that appears out of nowhere after a date that should have been lighthearted. That irritation you swallow too quickly to even feel properly. These aren't accidents. They're the interest on this bill that never arrives. And what nobody told you is that there's a credit limit. A point at which the bill, one way or another, needs to be paid. Now imagine a scale, not the pretty balanced image everyone associates with you. Imagine a real scale with two pans, where someone at some point placed extra weight on one side without warning. From afar it looks balanced. The two sides even move in a similar way. But anyone who looks closely notices. One of the pans is always a little deeper, always carrying more than it should. And the strangest thing is that you yourself put that weight there so long ago that you forgot it's not natural. You call this being flexible, knowing how to compromise. But compromising and balancing have never been the same thing, and a part of you has always known this, even while pretending not to. Who puts this extra burden on you anyway? Nobody forced you to. And that's exactly where things get more uncomfortable than any prediction of luck could ever be. Because if you yourself placed that burden on yourself, then a part of you decided, at some point, that it was safer to carry more than to disagree. Safer to yield than to risk an awkward silence after saying what you felt. And this decision, made so many times that it became automatic, created within you a way of loving that seems generous on the outside, but which inside is made of fear disguised as kindness. Nobody calls it by its right name. They call it education, maturity, knowing how to deal with people. But what if, this month, someone finally asked bluntly, maturity to protect whom, exactly? Yourself, or just the peace of others? This question kept nagging at me for a long time, without an easy answer, without a way to pretend I hadn't noticed the weight I myself had placed on my side of the scale. It was while searching for answers that I found this digital book, The Divine Path that guides your zodiac sign to a life of purpose. Isn't about luck falling from the sky in August. It's about honestly recognizing each burden Libra carries for fear of unbalancing the other, and how to put those burdens back in their rightful place without guilt, without drama, without asking permission to do so. It's not a generic step-by-step guide. It's more like a mental posture, a way to train your eye to see when balance has become disguised sacrifice, and to have the simple courage to change that. If you've made it this far feeling that tightness in your chest, that unsettling recognition of a pattern you've never quite named, it's because some part of you already knows that this month demands more than just waiting for luck to happen. It demands decision, and the longer you let that recognition cool down, the easier it is to revert to your usual automatic routine. Smiling, giving in, moving on without resolving anything internally. The link is in the first pinned comment, but be aware, this content may be taken down. Click now and download your copy. And while that's still on your mind, tell me in the comments, when was the last time you gave up something important just to avoid disrupting someone else's peace? This debt we're talking about, the bill that never arrives in the mail, has a curious way of charging interest. Not in money, in exhaustion. You've probably felt this before. Leaving a date that should have been light-hearted and arriving home exhausted without knowing exactly why. It wasn't the date, it was everything you swallowed during it. The opinion you held back, the desire to leave early that you disguised as, it's still early, let's stay a little longer. Each of these swallowed thoughts is a portion of the bill being paid silently with the most expensive currency there is, your own energy. And the problem with a bill that no one sees is that it has no visible limit. You can keep paying for years without realizing you're in debt until the day your body demands payment in a way your mind can no longer ignore. A tiredness that sleep doesn't solve, disproportionate irritation over something small, a sudden urge to disappear from everything without warning. This isn't malice or weakness, it's simply a bill that's too big to pay all at once after years of being paid little by little without anyone knowing it was being charged. And the most curious thing is that when that bill finally comes due, the people around you are usually surprised. But you were always so calm about it. I never imagined it bothered you so much. And they really didn't imagine it, because you never let them. Each installment paid in silence was also a portion of the truth that you hid from those who most needed to know about it, including yourself for a good part of the time. Now come back with me to that scale, the two pans, the extra weight on one side that you yourself put there. Notice something. An unbalanced scale still moves. It still swings from side to side. It still seems to be working. It's only up close, looking carefully, that one realizes that the movement is not balance. It's constant compensation, an invisible effort to prevent the heavier side from sinking completely. You've been doing this your whole life and calling it knowing how to compromise. But true compromise is a free choice, made without fear. What you've been doing most of the time is avoiding the discomfort of disagreeing, avoiding the awkward silence that comes after saying no, avoiding the possibility of someone distancing themselves because you had your own opinion. And this, however kind it may seem on the outside, has a much less pretty name on the inside, fear disguised as harmony. Who put that weight there anyway? No one forced you to put it there. But someone, at some point in your life, taught you that disagreeing was too costly, and you learned the lesson too quickly and too well. Perhaps it was a casual childhood comment, a time when disagreement generated an icy silence at the table. Perhaps it was simply the way you observed too early on that those who disagreed too much ended up alone. It doesn't matter exactly where it started. What matters is that this lesson, learned so well, became a reflex. And reflexes, unlike decisions, are not chosen every day. They are simply repeated, without revision, year after year, until someone or some specific month stops everything and asks if they still make sense. There's a specific type of compliment Libra receives all the time, and without realizing it, it becomes a comfortable prison. You're so easy to get along with. There's no stress around you. You always understand everyone's point of view. It sounds like a compliment, and it sounds good, especially for someone who has spent their life trying to keep everything peaceful around them. But pay attention to what this compliment is really saying. You are valued for not being a burden, for not demanding anything, for fitting into the space left over after everyone else has already occupied what they wanted. Imagine an actor who never takes off the costume, not even after the play ends, not even when the theater lights have gone out and the audience has left. He sleeps in the costume, he eats in the costume. At some point he forgets what the face underneath it was. That's what happens when someone spends years being applauded for a version of themselves designed to please. The real version becomes increasingly difficult to remember, to recognize, to trust. And what lies beneath that facade never truly disappears. It just waits silently for the right moment to remember it exists. And perhaps the most honest invitation this month brings is precisely this: to stop waiting for a perfect moment, sometime in the future, to shed the fantasy. The moment is now, imperfect, a little awkward, without a ready-made script, but real. It was in seeking to understand this specific type of imprisonment, disguised as praise, that this digital book, the divine path that guides your zodiac sign to a life of purpose, became so necessary for those who are Libra. It doesn't treat inner beauty as mere embellishment. It treats it as something that needs to be rediscovered beneath layers of fantasy that the world has applauded for far too long. It's about remembering the face beneath the costume before it becomes unrecognizable even to yourself. The link is in the first pinned comment. Access may be revoked at any time. Click now and begin your journey toward the clarity and genius you deserve. Here's something you may never have heard the right way. Your indecision was never about not knowing what you want. It was about knowing exactly what you want and being afraid of what would happen after admitting it out loud. Imagine a suspension bridge, one of those that sways slightly when several people cross it at the same time. From afar, it seems fragile, unstable. But what sustains this structure most of the time is a single firm base, hidden beneath the water, bearing the weight of everyone who passes over it without even realizing it exists. You have been that base, the person who holds the emotional stability of others, crossing over you while you sway a little but never collapse. Because you can't, because someone needs to hold you up. And there's a specific kind of loneliness in that, which almost no one talks about aloud. The loneliness of being indispensable and invisible at the same time. Everyone knows they can count on you. Few stop to ask who you can count on when the structure down below begins to silently crack. What if, this month, no one else had to step over you to feel safe? What if the stability you've offered to others finally started being offered to yourself, by yourself? Notice that no one ever asked you who would hold you up when the structure sways too much. They always asked if you were well enough to continue holding others up, and you always answered yes, even when the right answer, the honest answer, would be an uncomfortable silence, or perhaps a simple "I don't know." That "I don't know" was never weakness. It was the first real truth you had the courage to feel, even without the courage yet to say it aloud. The alignments of August 2026 don't touch Libra randomly. They press precisely on that point, the place where self-annihilation has become a habit disguised as a virtue. Think of a lighthouse. It exists to guide ships that aren't its own, illuminating the route for those lost in the dark, night after night, without ever lighting a light within itself. It is required to always be on for others. No one asks if the lighthouse from time to time also needs light. This month is the moment when the lighthouse turns around, not to stop helping those in need, but to finally illuminate its own path as well, for the first time in a long time. And what happens when the lighthouse turns around, even if only for a moment, is that it discovers something simple and disconcerting. Its light has always been bright enough for both sides. It's just that no one had pointed it inward before. There's a huge difference between lighting someone's path by choice and lighting it because it seems dangerous to leave that person alone in the dark. The first is true generosity. The second is fear disguised as kindness. And for years, a large part of Libra confused these two things, thinking they were being kind when, in practice, they were just avoiding the uncomfortable possibility of disappointing someone who perhaps didn't even need help that much. This is exactly the kind of turning point that the divine path that guides your zodiac sign towards a life of purpose helps to sustain, not as a generic self-esteem boost, but as a practical map for Libra to recognize when they are only illuminating someone else's path and how to redirect some of that light naturally and without guilt inward. The link is in the first pinned comment. Access may be revoked at any time. Click now and begin your journey toward the clarity and genius you deserve. And then comes the simplest and, at the same time, the most difficult part of all, the door. The one you always knew existed, unlocked all the time, but that you never had the courage to push. Not because it was heavy, because on the other side of it lies the real possibility of choosing something simply because you want to, without needing to justify it, without needing to balance that choice with anyone else's happiness. This month calls for exactly that. Not an abstract spiritual cleansing, not luck that fell ready-made from the sky. It calls for choice without excuse, will spoken aloud, without a "but only if everyone agrees" stuck to it. And it's frightening, because years of caring for the peace of others don't disappear overnight just because an astrological month calls for it. It's not about becoming a cold person or ceasing to care about those you love. It's about separating two things that, within Libra, have been intertwined for too long. Caring for someone and disappearing so that person can feel comfortable. They are different things, even if they seem the same from afar. August, with all the pressure this year carries, seems to have been specifically designed to force this separation once and for all. But perhaps that's precisely why this digital book has become, for so many Librans, more than just reading material, a kind of daily practice to push open that door without fear of the noise it might make. The divine path that guides your zodiac sign to a life of purpose speaks directly to that exact moment, the choice made without apologizing for existing. The link is in the first pinned comment. Access may be revoked at any time. Click now and begin your journey toward the clarity and genius you deserve. And in the end, what remains, after all this acknowledged billing, all this weight identified, all this fantasy finally dispelled, is a scale calibrated in a different way. Not because someone forcibly pushed the plates into the right place, but because little by little, each unnecessary weight was returned to where it truly belonged. a balance that doesn't need constant invisible effort to sustain itself, because it's not feigned, it's sincere. Perhaps this is the true blessing that August 2026 holds for Libra. Not a list of good things falling from the sky, but the rare experience of feeling both sides of life on the same level without anyone secretly holding you back. The harmony you always offered to others, finally returning home, within yourself, where it should always have resided first. There's no magic formula to transform years of habit into a single, complete New Year's Eve, but there is a starting point. And August 2026 is that point, clear and unmistakable for those born under the sign of Libra. Not because the stars decided to give you free luck, but because, finally, the right conditions aligned for you to stop waiting for permission to exist without apologizing for it. Libra has always known how to balance the world around them. The most beautiful and most difficult part of this month is finally learning to include oneself within that same balance, not as an exception, not as a sacrifice, but as a legitimate part of the equation that should always have been there.